All right, yesterday we had started a story of Ravivia and Rabbi Baruch Chanan. They were extremely liberal with the laws of Orla because they lived in Chutz La'aretz. Orla being the produce that grows in the first 3 years of a tree's growth. And they were so liberal that Mesafkus Fuki Lahadadi, that they wouldn't eat the Orla from their own orchards, but they would pass it on to the other rabbi. So basically, as long as the person did not harvest the Orla himself, even though he knew that it was Orla, they would eat it. Amri Charifi de Pumpadisa ein Orla b'chutz la'aretz, because they said that the elders of Pumpadisa, the earlier generations, had said that there's no din of Orla in chutz la'aretz, so we can be liberal. So Shalcha Rav Yehuda lekamei de Rabbi Yochanan. Rav Yehuda hears about this, and he sends a message to Eretz Yisrael to Rabbi Yochanan and asks him, Rabbi, like, how do you paskin? Is this the right thing? So Sholach lei stom sfeika va'abeit vada'a va'achrez al peirosein shetunim geniza. That he said like this, he said, listen, if it's just Safek Orla, then you can be quiet about it, which means don't publicize that Safek Orla is mutter, but you don't have to aser it outright. And va'abeit va'da, if you know for sure it's Orla, you have to destroy that psak. In other words, you have to come out against it and announce that their peiros, whatever is Orla for sure, needs to be put, you can't even get hana from it. You have to destroy it. You have to put it into hiding. B'chol ha'omer ein Orla b'chutz la'aretz lo yehi lo nin v'neched. And furthermore, we pronounce the following curse. If anyone says that the din of Orla does not apply in Chutz La'aretz, that person will not have any descendants. And quoting then a pasuk from Micha, Mashli Chevel B'Goral B'Kal Hashem. He will have no descendants that will enable him to measure his ancestral fields in the congregation of God. Basically, it's a curse. You're not going to have any descendants. Ve'inhu Kaman Savrua. So obviously Rabbi Yochanan felt very strongly about this. But these other rabbis in Bavel who were so liberal, how did they paskin? Or how did they paskin that way? Ki hadatanya, because they had a different brisa. The brisa says, Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Yossi, Omer Mishum Rabbi Yossi ben Dur Maska, Shama Mishum Rabbi Yossi Aglili, Shama Mishum Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri, Shama Mishum Rabbi Eliezer HaGadol. This whole chain of Tanoim, going all the way back to Rabbi Eliezer ben Horkinus, right, who said, Ein Orla b'chutz la'aretz, that there's no din of Orla in Chutz La'aretz at all. So the Gemara says, V'lo, how can you trace this back to Rabbi Eliezer? V'ha'anan tanan, Rabbi Eliezer Omer af hechadash. Remember, our Mishnah, the whole way we started off in this conversation was because there was a machlokus in the Mishnah. The Tanakama said that the din of Orla and Kilayim are exceptions, even though they're agricultural laws, they apply in Chutz La'aretz. And Rabbi Eliezer had said, even Chadash applies in Chutz La'aretz. So the word even implies that I agree with the Tanakama, that Orla and Kilayim apply in Chutz La'aretz, but I hold that also Chadash applies. So you clearly see that Rabbi Eliezer holds that Orla applies in Chutz La'aretz. So the Gemara answers Tani Chadash, that according to this brisa, you have to learn that it's not that he agrees with the Tanakama, he says that only Chadash applies in Chutz La'aretz, but Orla and Kilayim not. So obviously you have a big machlokas here. So Amar Rabbi Asi, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Orla b'chutz la'aretz halacha l'Moshe miSinai. So now we have a Rabbi Asi quoting Rabbi Yochanan once again, who's machmir, right? He says that Orla does apply in chutz la'aretz. Not only that, but it's a halacha l'Moshe miSinai, which means it has the level of a deoraisa, right? So Amar le Rabbi Zel, Rabbi Asi v'hatanya safek Orla ba'aretz asur b'surya motor. So, but wait a minute. But what about the din of Safek Orla? You yourself hold that Safek Orla, even if it's in Surya, which is in the annexed portions of Eretz Yisrael that have a quasi status of being in Eretz Yisrael, but you can be lenient by Safek Orla. So surely in Chutz La'aretz, you can be totally lenient with Safek Orla. Now, if you're holding that it's a halacha l'Moshe miSinai, so normally if it's a deoraisa level, well, what do we say? Safek deoraisa. L'chumra. So how can you be so liberal with Safek Orla? So the Gemara says that ishtomeim kishachada amarlei emakach nemar sveika muter vada aser. So Rabbi Asi was sort of bewildered for a moment. In other words, he had to think about it, which is a pasuk in Daniel. And then finally he said, you know what? You have to say that the halacha l'Moshe miSinai was not to assign Orla the absolute level of a deoraisa, in which case we would say Safek is Aser. It's only that Orla Vadai has a din of a deoraisa. But part of the halacha l'Moshe Misinai was that Safek Orla in Chutz La'aretz is going to be mutter. Now, this is a very, very strange halacha l'Moshe Misinai. It's very strange. I'm just going to leave that as the commentary. Because normally, if halacha l'Moshe Misinai has to model itself after any deoraisa law, why would the halacha l'Moshe Misinai dafka say that only vadai were machmir but safek not? It's very, very unusual. That's all we can say. Amar Rabbi Asi, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, and obviously it has to be fleshed out further. So Rabbi Asi, now quoting again his Rabbi Yochanan, says, Lokin ala kilayim devar Torah. That for kilayim in Chutz La'aretz, because we're so machmir in the laws of kilayim in Chutz La'aretz, you get malchus if you violate the laws of kilayim. And it's not clear whether he means if you plant it or if you eat it, but it does. Anyway, Amar le Rabbi. But as I think will become clear from the stories, even a person who just plants it is committing the Isser. Amar le Rabbi Elazar b'Rabbi Yossi v'hanan tanan hakilayim divrei sofrim. But didn't we learn that kilayim, mixing species, is only a rabbinic law in Chutz La'aretz? Lo kasher kan bekilei hakerim kan beharkavas ha'ilon kiddushmuel. So the Gemara says there are really two types of kilayim. You're confusing two different types of mixing species that have the same word kilayim. But one is when you plant seeds together. That's one kind of kilayim. That's only rabbinically prohibited in Chutz La'aretz. But there's another type of kilayim which is what we call grafting, which is where you graft from one species of tree onto another species of tree or plant. That is asr midioraisa even in Chutz La'aretz. Now, how do we know that? The Amar Shmuel es chukosai tishmoru chukim shechakakti lecha kevar. So there's an interesting pasuk in Sefer Vayikra which says, "Observe my statutes," and then it says, "Behem techalos arbia kilayim sadachalos izra kilayim," that you may not crossbreed your animals and you may not crossbreed your agriculture. And what do we learn from the phraseology of the pasuk es chukosai tishmaru? This means that this law is in reference to laws that I had given you even before I gave you the Torah. Es chukosai tishmaru means that even when you were just Noachides, this is part of Noachide law, that you're not allowed to crossbreed animals. It's even though technically it's not one of the 7 Noachide commandments, it's still under the rubric of what is the obligation of a non-Jew to not crossbreed animals. And therefore, in the same vein, so behemtecha lo sarbia kilayim sadecha lo sizra, ma behemtecha beharva avsadecha beharkava. That just like there's a prohibition of actually conjoining two animals that are of different species, so too there's an issur of conjoining two plants that are of different species. Uma behemtecha noig bein baretz bein b'chutz la'aretz, avsadecha noig bein baretz bein b'chutz la'aretz. And therefore, just like the crossbreeding of animals is prohibited everywhere, because after all it was a universal commandment given to Jews and non-Jews alike, and therefore it applies everywhere, so too the prohibition of crossbreeding or mixing species of plants by grafting them together is going to be an Isser D'Oraisa everywhere. Ve'ela haksiv sadecha. So the Gemara says, but wait a minute, but why does the pasuk therefore say your field may not be planted with climbing? Your field implies a field that is yours because it's an ancestral right for you to have that land. And that only applies in Eretz Yisrael. So the Gemara answers, that's coming to tell you that there is a type of kilayim that only applies in Eretz Yisrael. And what is that? That's the non-grafting type of kilayim, which is where you plant seeds together. When you plant seeds together, that prohibition mid'oraisa only applies in Eretz Yisrael. So Rav Chanan v'Rav Anan havu shakli va'azli bu'urcha chazyu le'ahu gavra dekazora zroim b'hadei hadadi. Let's look at a story. These two sages were walking down the road somewhere outside of Israel, probably in Bavel, and they see a man who's planting different species of seeds together. So Amarlei Nesimar Nishamte. So they said, why don't we put him under a ban? Because granted that there's only an Isser D'Rabbanan, but we should still ban him because he's violating an Isser D'Rabbanan. Amarlei Lo Chavarisu. So he said to him, you're clearly not clear on the laws of kilayim. If you're prepared to put a ban on this fellow, you need to be clear first on what the laws are before you suggest to go out and lash out at someone. So they continued walking, and they saw a man that was planting wheat and barley seeds right next to a vineyard. So Amarlei Nesi Mar Nishamte. So here again, the one sage said to the other, let's put him under a ban. He's violating the rabbinic law. So Amarlei Lo Tsaharisu. He says, you're not clear. In other words, they're not illuminated, the laws. Because Lo Kaimalon ka Rabbi Yoshia, don't we paskin like Rabbi Yoshia, who said, Do Omar, Ad Sheyizra Chita Usara V'chartzen B'mapoles Yad, that a person is not guilty of the violation, even midioraisa in Eretz Yisrael, until he plants all three seeds together, which means that you have to take a wheat kernel, a barley kernel, and a grape seed in the same hand and put them in the ground together in order to be in violation of kilayim midioraisa in Eretz Yisrael.
What would that produce anyways?
Mixture.
Three different plants.
Oh, separate.
Yeah, they're not being grafted, but you're planting them together. The point that he's making is that if I plant a vineyard and then a month later I plant wheat next to the vineyard, I haven't violated the Torah violation. So, midirabanan, we would require you not to do that. But in chutz la'aretz, we're not going to be machmir at all. In other words, because the only time we'll be machmir in chutz la'aretz is for you to plant these seeds together at the same time. But to plant one next to the other after one has already grown, we're not going to be machmir at all in chutz la'aretz. And that's why he felt it's not right to put this person under a ban. He's not doing anything wrong. Rav Yosef ma'arev bizrani v'zora. And Rav Yosef, accordingly, used to take seeds and mix them together, and he would plant them in chutz la'aretz, and he didn't feel there was anything wrong. So Amarle Abaye v'hanan tzanan kilayim medivrei sofrim. But Abaye said to him, but what if don't we paskin that kilayim applies at least midirabanan in chutz la'aretz? Amarle lo kasha kan bekilei hakerem kan bekilei zroim. Kilei hakerem dibaretz asurim bahana b'chutz la'aretz nami gazru b'hu rabbanan. But kilei zroim dibaretz lo asiri bahana b'chutz la'aretz nami lo gazru b'hu rabbanan. Rabbi Yosef said, that's not a contradiction. You're right. There is a din of kilayim in chutz la'aretz midirabanan, but only when you're planting grain together with the vines. Why? Because in Eretz Yisrael, that's asur bahana if you do that. So therefore, the rabbis were gozer in chutz la'aretz also. But to just mix seeds of different plants like wheat and barley together, that's not going to be asur bahana in Eretz Yisrael, and therefore there's nothing wrong with it at all. Even lechatchila, you're allowed to do that in chutz la'aretz. So Hadar Amar Rav Yosef Lav Milsi da Amri. Now remember, Rav Yosef used to suffer from amnesia, and so sometimes he wasn't clear on certain things, and his Talmud had to remind him. So he said, you know what? Perhaps what I said was an error, because the Rav Zora Ginsa Deve Rav Mishari. My time alav mishum eruve kilayim. He says, I remember now that Rav, the great Amora, used to plant in his field, he used to plant different grains and different vegetables in separate rows. So doesn't that imply that even in chutz la'aretz, you're not allowed to mix seeds together? So Amar le Abaye Bishlama hi ashmu'inan arba al arba ruchos aruga ve'echas be'emtzu shapir. So Abaye says no. Rav did not do that because of a concern of kilayim. Because if you would have heard that Rav had a field, and only on the periphery of his field did he plant one species, and in the center of his field he planted another species, that's the prescribed method of avoiding the problem of kilayim in the Mishnah. But to plant it rows next to each other where you're not spacing them properly, that's not an issue of kilayim. That because Rav did not take the proper precautions to avoid kilayim. Why then did he plant different species in different rows? Elahacha mishum noi v'inama mishum tircha deshamahi. Either because of aesthetics, is that he wanted to preserve the aesthetic appearance of a field, and it looks sloppy if you're planting different seeds in one row. It doesn't look nice. Another reason could be to create convenience for an employee of his who was the butler. He would send out the butler and bring me a bunch of tomatoes from the garden. So if the tomatoes are haphazardly growing in different parts of the garden, it's going to take the butler longer to figure out where the tomatoes are. So therefore, he grew everything in an organized fashion, row by row, so that it would be easier for his employee to find them. But the bottom line is that it seems like there's bichlal no concern of kilayim when you're not dealing with planting next to a vineyard in Chutz La'aretz. That seems to be the maskana of the Gemara. Let's go on to, and as far as what about planting seeds next to each other in Eretz Yisrael, it seems that the Gemara is more equivocal. I haven't had a chance to look into the poskim. Probably would make a good shir to find out what the parameters of kilayim are, especially in Eretz Yisrael. That maybe will, this is not halacha, this is halacha, but not lamaisa. Mishnah. Kol ha'osa mitzvah echas meitivin lo u'ma'arichan lo yama v'nochel es ha'aretz. V'chol she'ena osa mitzvah echas ein meitivin lo ve'en ma'arichan lo yama ve'en nochel es ha'aretz. This is a very cryptic and vague Mishnah. It says that anyone who does just one mitzvah will be granted goodness in this world, long life, and will get the life of the world to come. But if a person does not do one mitzvah, then he will get none of the above. He will not get a good life, he will not get a long life, and he will not get olam haba. Now what does this mean if you just do one mitzvah? You just do one mitzvah, then you can murder and pillage and do everything else you want as long as you do one mitzvah? What does this mean? So let's take a look at the Gemara. The Gemara is also bothered by this. Or a mini. Let's raise a contradiction. Elu divarim she'adam ochel peroseim ba'olam hazeh v'akeren kayemes lo li'olam haba. This should be very familiar. It's a Mishnah Peah that we say every morning after Birkas HaTorah. These are the things that a person is able to derive the dividends, the peiros, he gets to enjoy in this world. But the principle is preserved for him in the next world. And what are they? Elohein kibud avayim ugamilus chasadim ve'achnasus orchim v'havoah shalom bin adam lachavero v'salma Torah keneged kulam. They are, we say a slight variant of this girsa. Bikur cholim v'achnasus kala u'lavoyas hames. Right? So these are the things that a person, right? So what are they? Honoring your parents, doing acts of kindness, having guests in your home, creating peace between man and his fellow man, and learning Torah is weighted against all of them as the thing that provides you with these benefits. What is the Gemara asking from this Mishnah? It seems that the only time that you get both a good life in this world and a good life in the next world is only for these, but not for any generic mitzvah, not for putting on tzitzis, for example. That's not part of the list. Maybe for tzitzis I only get a good life in the next world, but not in this world. So how do you reconcile it? Amar Rav Yehuda Hachika Amar Kol ha'osa mitzvah echas yesera al zuchuyosav meitivin lo v'doma kemi shemekayim kol haTorah kula. So the Gemara answers as follows. Our Mishnah is talking about a totally different issue. Our Mishnah is saying is that is dealing with a person who is in exactly the 50-50 balance point, which is always a very, very problematic discussion, because in God's divine system of justice, how common is it for a person to be mamish 50-50? And how does God measure your merits against your demerits? It's a very difficult sugya. We're just going over it in a very cursory fashion. So we're dealing with a person whose mamish, the balance scale is exactly 50-50, and what the Mishnah is saying is that you can push yourself over to the side of complete merit, and in the Zechus of all of the mitzvahs that you've done, you'll get a good life in this world and in the next world just by doing one mitzvah, to push yourself over the side of merit. But if not,
opinion of the Rambam.
Right, yeah, the Rambam says this in Hilchos Tshuva, exactly, Mr. Friedman. But if not, so then Hashem can't bring you both goodness in this world and in the next world. So then the Gemara says, so wait a minute. Michlal de hanach afilu b'chadanami. So you mean to tell me that if you do the mitzvahs that are listed in the Mishnah in Peah, let's say you honor your parents, but you murder and pillage, and you have a majority of sins, you'll still get good life in this world in Olam Haba? Is that what the Mishnah Peah is saying? That doesn't make any sense. Amar of Shemaya lomar shim haisa shekula machra'as v'chola osa mitzvah echas yesera al zuchu yosef meitivin lo. So the Gemara answers that, lomar shim haisa shekula machra'as, period. The answer is that these mitzvahs that are listed in Peah, honoring your parents and Talmud Torah and things like that, that's to tell you that these mitzvahs are so powerful that you don't need to have the scale in the majority section for mitzvahs over averis. that even if you're 50-50, but one of the mitzvahs that you've done on the side of merit is Talmud Torah, honoring your parents, achnasas orchim, and so forth, so then that tips the scales in your favor, even if you're still just 50-50.
Why only these and not any other mitzvah? Why are these more special?
The question is, right. So where does the Mishnah know this from? Probably from Psukim, because by Kibbut Avayim it says L'man Yarichun Yamecha, and by all of the acts of Gemilus Chesed it says L'man Yitav Lach, or some other pasuk by Talmud Torah. Also, right, there seems to be some implications that these particular mitzvahs, I'm sure we could find Psukim, either in Torah or the Nach, that imply that these have special status. But that's not really the subject of the Gemara today. So the Gemara now says, let's go back to your original assumption. He says, V'chol sha'avonosov merubin mezuchuyosov meitivin lo v'dima. I'm sorry, I lost the place. So 1 second, you mean to tell me that if a person does just one extra mitzvah to tilt the scales in the favor of merits, that he gets both a good life in this world and in the next world? Or a minu, let me show you a contradiction. Kol shesuchuyosov merubim me'avonosov meirian lo v'doma kemisha sarf kol haTorah kula v'lo shir mimenu afilos echas. That if a person has a majority of merits versus demerits, then Hashem will punish him in this world for the minority of demerits, so that he can, life will be so bad for him that it'll appear to the outsider, to the person looking at this person's life, as if this person burned an entire Sefer Torah, and that's why he's suffering so much. Even though in reality this person did more mitzvahs than Averos, but Hashem wants to pay him back in this world for the Averos so that he can preserve his chelek in Olam Haba and keep it in full and intact. And conversely, v'chol she'avonosov merubin mizuchuyosov meitivin lo v'doma kemishakim kol haTorah kula v'lo chiser os echas mimena. And if a person has a majority of demerits and a minority of merits, then Hashem will reward him for all of his minority of merits in this world. And to the outsider, it'll look like, wow, he's living such a wonderful, luxurious life. It must be he's such a tzaddik and has done all the Torah. When in reality, he's going to be punished in the next world, and Hashem is saving his punishment for the next world. So how can you tell me that just as long as I tip the scales in the favor of merit, I get a good life in this world and a good life in the next world? So the Gemara answers, Amar Abaya masnisin da'avdin le yom tav v'yom bish. Abaya says it's not a contradiction. When the Mishnah says Hashem will give you good life, it means he's going to punish you. In other words, that's what good life means. What does it mean Hashem is going to give you a good life? It means he's going to give you a good thrashing, right? In other words, when your father says, I'm going to get you good, right? It means that, right? In other words, why is it good? It's good because through your suffering here, you'll end up getting a good portion in the future. And the same thing, when it says that you're going to get bad in this world,
it's opposite. They get a good life here.
That's right, exactly. So when it says Merian lo in the Mishnah, it means Hashem will give you a great life, but that's a Merian. That's actually a liability to get all of your schar in this world.
So it flips the question, Tzadi for Allah, Rasha V'Tovlo.
Exactly.
Just what you see.
Exactly, right. Exactly, right. But Rava says no. Rava says, I disagree. You're trying to reconcile two systems or two theological positions. And our Mishnah is one theological position, and the Brisa is a totally different theological position. Rava Amar Hamani Rabbi Yaakov, da Amar Schar Mitzvah B'Hayal Maleka. Rabbi Yaakov is the author of the Brisa, and the author of our Mishnah is a different Tana. The Tana of the Mishnah holds that it is possible to enjoy the rewards for mitzvahs both in this world and in the next world. But Rabbi Yaakov says no, schar mitzvah b'hayal maleka, that there is no reward for mitzvahs in this world, and argues presumably with the Mishnah in Peah as well. Now, it's very important to know that these are complex theological issues. So we're going to try and simplify them, but anytime you're trying to simplify, you run the risk of oversimplification. But the point is that if someone tells you, there are no rewards for mitzvahs in this world, but then they say, well, what about the fact that the Mishnah Peah says you get the rewards in this world? The simple answer is it's a machlokes. Just like the Gemara is speaking out here, it is a machlokes as to whether you can get rewarded for mitzvahs in this world or not. So let us see. The Tanya Rabbi Yaakov Omer, Ein lecha kol mitzvah sheksuva b'tov shematan schar b'tzida, she'ein tchias hamesim tluya ba. Rabbi Yaakov says that any mitzvah, even those mitzvahs that tell you that if you do it you will get rewarded with good life, it's not referring to life in this world, but rather referring to life after Tchias HaMesim, after the resurrection. And I'll prove it to you, he says. It says, for when you honor your parents, that you'll have long days and you'll have a good life. And for sending away the mother bird, it says you'll have a good life and you'll have length of days. But Haresha Amar Lo Aviv Alei Labira V'Haveli Gozalos V'Olo Labira V'Shilach Esaim V'Natal Esabonim V'Chaziros and Afal V'Meis Heichan Tovas Yamav Shalzeh V'Heichan Arichus Yamav Shalzeh. So he says, Rabbi Yaakov says, so then what are you going to say to a situation where a father tells his son, climb up the ladder, send away the mother bird up by that high coop that's up there, and then bring the chicks back, and you'll do the mitzvah of Shiluach HaKein and the mitzvah of Kibbud Avayim at the same time. And on the way down from the ladder, the child slips and falls and dies. So where's the length of days and where's the good life for this child? Nebuch. So El Laman Yitav Lach LaOlam Shekulo Tov, Ulaman Yarichon Yamecha LaOlam Shekulo Aroch. So therefore, Rabbi Yaakov concludes that you see that it doesn't work that way, and therefore you must conclude that even when the Torah guarantees you long life, it's referring to long life in the next world, not in this world. The Gemara says, "V'dilma lav hachi hava," but the Gemara says, how does Rabbi Yaakov know that that's the way the theological system works? Maybe taka, if a child is commanded by his father to do the mitzvah Shiluach HaKein, he will be protected and he won't die. The Gemara says, because Rabbi Yaakov Ma'isa Chaza, because he actually saw it with his own eyes. He saw such a tragic situation where a child was doing a mitzvah, and he fell, and he died. But the Gemara says, V'dilma mahar ba'avera hava. But maybe at the time when he was doing the mitzvah, he was thinking about an avera, and that's why God punished them. No, God's system of justice would not allow a person in the process of doing a mitzvah to be punished for a sin he's committing. Because just because you have a thought of a sin, as long as you're doing mitzvahs, you're protected. Maybe the guy's thinking about doing avodah zarah, and when you're thinking about avodah zarah, there we know that you're punishable even for the thoughts, not like other averas. Because uchasiv laman tfos es beis Yisrael belibam, as the pasuk says in Yechezkel, that you can punish the Jews for the sin of avodah zarah that's in their hearts. There it's clear in the pasuk that you're punishable. So the Gemara answers, Iunami hachika amar. But that's exactly what Rabbi Yaakov was arguing. Isal gedaitach schar mitzvah b'hai alma, amaylo agen mitzvah saleki, hechida lo leisi lidei hirhor. His whole point is if you're going to suggest that doing mitzvahs protects you and gives you reward in this world, then the mitzvah of Shiluach HaKein and Kibbud Avayim should have protected him from having sinful thoughts of avodah zarah. And the fact that it didn't, if taka, God struck him down because of avodah zarah, then where was the protective power of the mitzvah that he was in the midst of doing? That's Rabbi Yaakov's proof. What were you going to say, Mendel?
I was saying, maybe he didn't have the right, when his father told him to do something, maybe he wasn't happy about it. Like, I know, for instance, tzedakah. If you give tzedakah and you're not happy about giving it, you don't get the star for the tzedakah.
Well, that's not so clear that you don't get the schar for it. You know, there are chazal that suggest that by tzedakah, but it's not clear that applies for all mitzvahs. You know, what?
Not a reason to die,
and it's certainly not a reason to die.
Yeah. Kavana or not.
Right. Anyway, so frek the Gemara. Let's ask another question. Vaha Amar Rabbi Lazar shluchei mitzvah eini zoken. But what about the principle that if you're in the process of doing a mitzvah, then Hashem protects you from harm? So how could that child die? So Hasam Bahalichasan Shiny. So the Gemara says, no, only when you're on the way to do the mitzvah does God protect you, but not when you're finished with it. Here the kid was on his way down. So the Gemara says, Vaha Amar Rabbi Lazar shluchei mitzvah einu nizokim lo bahalichasan v'lo b'chazirasan. But Rabbi Lazar was quoted explicitly as saying that you're protected even on your way back from the mitzvah. The Gemara says, Sulam ra'u ahava de kavia hezeka, v'chol heicha de kavia hezeka lo samchinan anisa. He says it's different. The ladder that the father sent the kid up was a dilapidated ladder. And because it was a hazard to climb up that ladder to begin with, Hashem will not protect you from situations where you endanger your life deliberately. In other words, you can't say, well, I'm going to go ahead and do a mitzvah, so I'm going to cross over Bathurst and I'm going to jaywalk and assume that no car will hit me going at 80 kilometers an hour. You can't make that assumption because you're endangering, it's a negligent endangering of your own life. And that's what was going on over here. And how do we know this? Vayomer Shmuel eich elech v'shama Shaul v'haragani. That Shmuel said when he was told to anoint King David, he said, how can I go to the Mishkan and anoint David? Shaul's going to see me, he's going to kill me. How can he ask such a question? Hashem told him to do it. The answer is because you're only protected from a mitzvah when it's not a clear and present danger. By the way, just to tell you a very interesting theological dilemma I remember having about 10 years ago when there was the number 2 bus. Remember the number 2 bus that exploded on the way back from the Kotel? Mm-hmm. Was that about 10 years ago, I think? Something like that. So people were saying, how could such a thing be? Shluchei mitzvah inam nizokim lo bahalichasan v'lo b'chazirasan. Right? So how could someone who's just coming from the Kotel be blown up on a bus, Rachmana litzlan? So my conclusion was that you have to conclude that going on a bus in Yerushalayim at that particular moment was shchicha hezeka, that people should not go on buses anymore. If to that extent, even if when you're doing a mitzvah, you're not protected, so that means that shchicha hezeka, because that seems to be the conclusion of the Gemara.
These people yesterday were on their way to Hebron, no? On the way back from Hebron.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, maybe it was to Hebron. Yeah, I mean the whole thing is. These are very difficult theological issues.
Acher lost his mind here. This is the story of Acher.
Yeah, but we're going to see Acher in just a minute. Amar of Yosef.
Wait, was saying Yosef.
What's that?
Saying Yosef to find his brothers. Yaakov. He's saying Yosef to find his brothers. It's a mitzvah.
Right, true. But there Yosef Taka was protected, right?
It's almost a happy ending. But you have Keep Shahaish, you have Daniel and Guf Harayot. It's all Hezekah. They go in, they were unscathed. So who would walk into a fire? Right,
but that's not Holech Lasos mitzvah over there. There Hashem protects the tzaddik from Hezek. Amar of Yosef.
Father here.
What?
The father should not put the son on this ladder, and the boy should not.
The father was guilty, and the son was guilty. They should have both known.
The son should not have done it.
The son should have told his father, "I'm sorry, Dad."
Even though it's a mitzvah to Raizel too.
Even though it's a mitzvah to listen to you, but it's a bigger mitzvah. Amar of Yosef ilmoli. It depends whether the kid was a bar mitzvah boy or not. It's not clear. Amar of Yosef ilmoli darshe acher lahaikrok Rabbi Yaakov bar berate lo chata. If only Acher, Rabbi Elisha ben Abuya, after he became a heretic, was known as Acher, had he only explained the pasuk the way his grandson Rabbi Yaakov had explained it, he never would have sinned and become a heretic. Va'acher maihu. So what did he see to make him become a heretic? Some say that he saw the same thing as Rabbi Yaakov saw, the kid going up the ladder. This is all from the Gemara in Chagiga that we've learned already. That some say that the thing that made Acher a heretic was that he saw at a time of tremendous destruction and shmad that the great tzaddik Chutzpis HaMeturgaman, the great translator, the great interpreter, who would announce the shir, he was tortured and his body was mutilated after he was executed, and his tongue was cast out into the street, and a pig put it in his mouth and walked off with it. So Acher said, how could the tongue that uttered pearls of greatness, how could it now be cast in the dust? So Rami Rav Tovi bar Rav Kistan l'Rava. Tanan kol ha'osa mitzvah echas meitivin lo, asa in lo asa lo, or a mini. So it seems from our Mishnah that the only way that you can receive reward is if you proactively do a mitzvah. But if you just sit and do nothing, you don't get rewarded. Let's raise a contradiction. Yasha v'lo aver avera nosim lo scharka osa mitzvah. This brisa says that as long as you sit passively and don't do an avera, you get rewarded. So how do you reconcile? One is you have to be proactive, and the other one says you get rewarded even for being passive. So Amar lei hasam kegon shabbat dvar avera liyado v'nitzal heimeno. The answer is it depends on the circumstances. If you're sitting at home in your gatkes and you do nothing, so Hashem's not going to give you any reward. But if you're in a situation where you have a tremendously oppressive seduction to sin, and you resist the seduction, so then Hashem rewards you. So what's the example? Kihad Rabbi Chanina bar Papi tav'as eyahi matrunisa. There was once a Gentile woman of tremendous political power who tried to seduce Rabbi Chanina. So Amar Milsa Umali Nafshe Shichna V'Kiva. So he wanted to resist her advances, so he used an incantation to magically cause his body to be filled with boils and scabs to become unattractive to her. Of the he Milsa V'Itzi. So she knew incantations too. So she uttered an incantation, and miraculously he was cured. So Orak Tasha Be'ahu Be'bani Dechi Havu Ailin Betrain Afilu Biyamama Havu Mitzaki. So he ran away and he hid in a bathhouse which was so filled with injurious demonic shadim that two people who would go even during the daytime would have to face the risk of getting injured by these shadim, because a bathhouse is notorious for containing shadim unless the public goes there. And so he went there at night by himself to hide, because he would rather get harmed by the shadim than have to succumb to the sin. But lomachar amulei rabbanan man natrach. But when he reemerged unscathed from the bathhouse the next day, the Chachamim said to him, "Who protected you?" Amar lahu shnei nosei kesar shamruni kol halayla. He said, 2 officers of the Caesar protected me the entire night. Obviously, this story, which is so rich in imagery, has much deeper content. So Amrulei Shema Devar Erva Baliyatcha V'nitzalta Heimenu. So they said to him, for you to deserve such special miraculous protection probably is because you were facing a situation of sexual seduction and you resisted the advances, and that's why you were privy to such a miracle. The Tanina kol habad dvar erva liyado v'nitzal heimenu osim lo nes. As we have a brisa that says that if a person is facing a seductive situation and resists it and is able to withstand it, Hashem will do a miracle for that person. Okay? And this is where we will hold it for today.